Amazon has a habit of entering markets quietly and changing them anyway. So when it didn't just buy electric vans from Rivian, but helped create the conditions for Rivian to learn, scale, and prove itself in the real world, automakers had reason to pay attention. Because this was never just a vehicle order. It looked more like an early claim on the future of commercial fleets. The reason this hits differently is simple. Amazon is not a normal customer. It is one of the world's biggest logistics machines. In 2019, it announced a plan to put 100,000 Rivian-built electric delivery vans on the road by 2030. Years later, Rivian said more than 20,000 of those vans were already operating, and that Amazon used them to deliver more than 1 billion packages in 2024 alone. That matters because commercial vehicles are not sold on branding alone. They are sold on uptime, route performance, serviceability, and total operating cost. Amazon gave Rivian something most startups never get: a giant live environment to test all of it at scale. The most obvious pressure point was not Tesla. It was the companies already fighting for the commercial van market. The manufacturers that understood fleet sales, but now faced a startup with an unusually powerful launch partner. And in this market, early proof matters. Fleet buyers are conservative. They do not just want an electric van that exists. They want one that survives daily routes, charging cycles, driver abuse, maintenance headaches, and weather. Amazon gave Rivian a chance to build that proof faster than most rivals could generate it. That is what makes incumbents uncomfortable. Here is the mechanism. First, Amazon gave Rivian guaranteed demand. That helps production planning, supplier negotiations, and internal confidence. Second, those vans generated real operating feedback at meaningful volume. That improves design, software, maintenance strategy, and cost control. Third, every successful route makes the product easier to sell to the next fleet customer. That sequence is hard to copy. A legacy automaker can build an electric van. What it cannot instantly manufacture is a giant anchor customer willing to deploy thousands of units into dense daily use. Amazon effectively reduced one of Rivian's biggest startup problems: commercial credibility. And commercial credibility is not abstract. It is built in tiny, expensive details. How does the battery behave after repeated stop-and-go cycles? How often do doors, latches, cameras, and sensors need service when a vehicle is opened? How does cabin layout affect driver speed and fatigue over long route weeks? How much downtime can be prevented through software fixes before a mechanical issue becomes a fleet-wide cost event? Those are not glamorous questions, but for fleet operators, they are often the whole game. That is why a live customer like Amazon matters so much more than a polished launch presentation. Presentation slides can suggest efficiency. Pilot programs can hint at promise, but daily commercial use reveals where the real weaknesses are and gives the manufacturer a chance to correct them before the wider market fully arrives. In that sense, Amazon was not just buying vans. It was helping generate the operating history that future customers could point to. And this is where the anxiety deepens. In consumer cars, a weak launch can sometimes be fixed with marketing and incentives. In fleet vehicles, reputation compounds more brutally. If one player becomes the proven operator, every competitor has to explain why it should still be trusted. Once that advantage exists, the story gets bigger than Amazon. Because the real prize is not one customer, it is access to the broader fleet market. Telecom companies, local delivery operators, service businesses, utilities, and corporate logistics networks trying to electrify without taking reckless operational risks. Rivian began moving in that direction after Amazon exclusivity ended in late 2023. And by early 2025, it had opened van sales to fleets of all sizes in the United States. That is the structural worry. Amazon may have helped Rivian survive the hardest phase. Then the van platform could be sold beyond Amazon. Suddenly, a partnership that once looked narrow starts to resemble a launch ramp. And that is usually how market power spreads in commercial industries. It rarely arrives as a dramatic knockout. It spreads through references, procurement conversations, operating case studies, and quiet shifts in buyer comfort. One company says, "We've seen this vehicle work under Amazon-level pressure." If Rivian can answer those questions with real operating evidence instead of theory, it enters the room differently. At the same time, some rivals were still trying to make the economics work. Ford's E-Transit became America's best-selling electric van in 2024, showing incumbents are very much alive. But GM shifted BrightDrop under Chevrolet to use its dealer network, and later paused production amid slow demand. That contrast matters. It suggests this market is not just about building an EV. It is about building a commercial system around it. Because fleets do not buy vehicles in isolation. They buy financing, service coverage, training, charging coordination, and confidence that a problem in one city will not become a national headache. That is why Amazon's role mattered beyond order, volume. It helped Rivian develop under the pressure of a real operating ecosystem. And if that ecosystem starts looking credible to outside buyers, the competitive damage is no longer limited to one contract. It starts affecting who gets shortlisted in the next wave of fleet electrification. But there is a real argument against overreacting. Amazon's original exclusivity is gone. Amazon itself also tests vehicles from other manufacturers. In 2024, a parts shortage temporarily halted Rivian's Amazon van production. So no, this is not a clean story about total domination. Not yet. The incumbents are still powerful. They have service networks, financing arms, procurement relationships, and manufacturing depth that Rivian does not. The real concern for automakers is not that Amazon guaranteed Rivian permanent victory. It is that Amazon may have accelerated Rivian into relevance. In an industry where commercial trust is expensive and slow to earn, that matters. And the market kept validating Rivian in other ways. In 2024, Volkswagen announced a major software and technology partnership with Rivian that later expanded to a larger funding commitment. That was not about delivery vans directly, but it reinforced a broader message to the industry. Rivian was not being treated like a disposable EV startup. It was being treated like a company with technology other giants wanted. That matters because industries do not only respond to sales, they respond to signals. They watch who gets taken seriously, who attracts capital, who wins partnerships, who proves adaptable under pressure, and who keeps earning second chances when conditions get harder. Amazon gave Rivian one kind of signal, operational legitimacy. Volkswagen added another, strategic legitimacy. Put those together and Rivian starts to look less like a speculative EV name and more like a company building staying power. That changes how the Amazon partnership should be read. Not as an isolated purchase order, not even mainly as a climate story, but as one of the earliest proofs that a startup could use a giant strategic customer to accelerate product maturity, operational learning, and market credibility, then try to carry that momentum into the wider commercial world. And if rival automakers are uneasy, that unease makes sense, because the threat is not only the vehicle itself, it is the sequence behind it. First comes the anchor customer, then the data, then the product improvements, then the proof points, then the outside partnerships, then the broader market access. If that model works, automakers are not just competing against a van, they're competing against a playbook. You've watched Triumphs and Troubles. Subscribe to the channel for true business stories and comment which company should we cover next.